So this National Voter Registration Act, which was a left-wing effort under the Clinton administration, they wanted to use the DMV, welfare offices, places where public assistance was given to register the under-registered masses that they thought would usher in a new era of leftism.
It was a compromise bill.
And of course, Republicans
Republican
opposed
Congress.
it, and they didn't, Republicans being Republicans, they're skeptical of things like that, and they're worried about voter fraud. And so the compromise was they clean up the list, that you can, look, you want to register people to vote, that's great. And certainly we all want people to exercise their franchise. Yeah. But we also want to make sure that people are only voting once, and that people can be confident the voter rolls and the election administration is being competently run in a way that doesn't provide opportunities for fraud. And the left-controlled Justice Department in both Republican and Democrat administrations.
I worked there and I cannot disagree.
And they didn't want to enforce that part of the law requiring the states to take reasonable steps to clean up the rolls. Is that correct?
I would say that a large number of those who worked in the Justice Department, and perhaps of those who work there still, did not want to enforce the National Voter Registration Act.
Okay, you worked in the Obama Justice Department for how many years?
The Obama Justice Department for 5 and the Bush Justice Department for 3.
So in the Obama Justice Department, the time you were there, did they ever file any action? We know through our own efforts there were millions of extra names on the rolls. States weren't doing their work. Did the Obama Justice Department ever take any enforcement action to clean up the rolls as the law requires?
No.
And after you left, did it happen?
After that, the Trump Justice Department got involved again in that kind of enforcement. But no, there was a 10-year gap where no such lawsuits were filed, and it encompassed the entire Obama administration.
And it was only until Judicial Watch used that provision of the law that allows private parties to enforce it. We sued in Ohio and Indiana. That was the first private causes of action to try to clean up the rolls that the DOJ wasn't refusing to enforce.
Right, and now there are a couple of groups who do what we do, but we're the only group to have sued 3 states.
So we sued Ohio and Indiana. In Ohio, we came to it like in Los Angeles and California, we had a settlement with Ohio, and the left went crazy.
Right.
What happened there?
Oh, well, it's still happening. I mean, there's still a lawsuit arising out of that, but our settlement agreement has lapsed. It's time lapsed. It was so long ago. But in that case, they agreed to conduct mailings on a schedule that we specified, and the schedule was subsequently upheld by the Supreme Court. In Kentucky, we won.
Let's go back to the Supreme Court upholding our settlement, because that's a big...
Well, so the left, we weren't technically litigants to that case, but they were
challenging the effect of our settlement.
Right. They were challenging the interpretation that justified our settlement, yes. And it would have affected our settlement if they had won.
So the Supreme Court validated our approach.
It not only validated our approach, it strongly validated our approach. And it made clear that the removal of voters who've moved elsewhere isn't just something the state can do if it wants to. The state has to do it. And, just back to the compromise bill, the motor voter part of the bill has succeeded spectacularly. Registration rates are up nationally, I believe, 11%.
Good.
Okay. The other part has not succeeded so spectacularly. States don't like to do it. It costs money. It takes time and effort. The Justice Department typically won't enforce it or hasn't enforced it. So it's up to us to do that kind of thing. And these inactive roles, I just want to make this very clear. Our experience is that above 95% of the people on the inactive roll really have left the state. Above, and I mean, we've seen numbers 99%, we've seen numbers above 99%. So, we're talking, if I say to you there's an inactive list of 1.6 million in Los Angeles, I'm telling you that it is very, very likely that a population larger than the entire population of the state of Hawaii is no longer in California and is registered to vote there.
Still.
In Los Angeles County.
And if someone showed up to vote in their name, because California, like most of the big states in our country, doesn't have a voter ID. Right. But obviously, the left is obsessed with these issues. What's the ideological opposition to taking reasonable steps to clean up the rolls? We're not, practically speaking, the process is, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't vote. The state can send you a mailing and say, hey, you didn't vote. Are you still there? And if they don't hear from you and you don't vote in the next 2 federal elections, so that's
2 to 4 years.
So that could be, practically speaking, 5 to 6 years before you're removed, if you include the mailing, then they remove your name. But it doesn't mean you can't re-register and you can't vote if you show up again.
No, registering will take about an hour.
Yeah, so it doesn't stop. But why would anyone oppose that?
Well, I think the argument that's been made, and I don't buy a word of it, okay? And just to be clear, the evidence doesn't support it, but the argument that's been made is that it suppresses registration, it suppresses somehow people who just simply aren't paying attention to their registration, and it shouldn't lapse for those people. The argument's been made that there's racial differentials in how this law impacts voters, that it impacts more groups from one race or another. None of that has been established. The law's been upheld.
They're playing the race
repeated constitutional challenges. 3 district courts and circuit courts have upheld the laws, in the 90s. So,
well, you're a careful lawyer. You probably won't make the conclusion that I'll draw here.
I probably won't.
You may agree with it.
Yeah.
So, to me, if you've got advocacy groups lying about race to justify dirty voting rolls, you have to wonder what the real reason is. And I would suggest that when you oppose cleaning up the voter rolls, these same groups oppose voter ID, again, based on specious reasons. They oppose the idea of citizenship verification, which is a whole other ball of wax, where you've got millions of aliens in the United States, numbers of which are probably registering to vote and
they
are able to.
Even gathering information on
figuring out if it's a problem. They don't even want to figure out if it's a problem.
Yeah, don't look.
And they obviously are pushing now this ballot harvesting craziness, attacking the Electoral College. I mean, to me, that's a whole group of people, the left, that's trying to set up our election system or guarantee our election system. They're able to steal elections when necessary. I mean, I don't know why would you oppose election fraud unless you benefited from it?
Well, I don't have the answer for it. I don't oppose it. I understand what you're saying, but I would just make the point that all the motivations you're talking about, and I mean, you put me under oath, okay, I believe a lot of, I understand what you're saying, but that stuff, they try to smear it to people who make these arguments like so much jam to cover the NVRA and voter registrations. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because this is already federal law. Okay, and it's been upheld as constitutional. So the arguments about race-based differentials and so on really come from the voter ID arena and don't apply and don't work there.
Well,
but you certainly can't extend that to the national voter registration.
Well, in Georgia, Stacey Abrams, the failed gubernatorial candidate, has famously or infamously suggested that she would have won but for I don't think it's based on the MVRA, the motor voter bill, but for a cleanup of the voter rolls that was way overdue and perfectly within the law.
That's nonsense. It's nonsense. The margin was too big. That's just not plausible. If she can raise money from it, more power to her, but it's not true. Okay, but the kind of thing that we do when we try to clean up the voter rolls is much less controversial than the issues you're talking about. But if we are talking voter ID, minority turnout increased after the voter ID law was imposed, just as it had in Tennessee, just as it had in other states. So that argument doesn't fly on its own. But being a lawyer and putting things in categories, I don't have to win that argument.
Right.
I do, but I don't have to.
So we've had remarkable success in the area of the law that we've been specifically pursuing on cleaning up the rolls. We set nationwide precedents, and we send warning letters to various jurisdictions, and we don't always sue, but we find they sometimes respond and say, well, we're cleaning up the rolls. Thanks for letting us know. We didn't understand what the requirements were.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.